Paul, can I start with you just on the NHS shirts? What's the thinking behind that? How's that come about? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we wanted to pay our own tribute to the NHS and thank them. We obviously have got the tickets set aside for next season, which is part of that, and we've also set up the Albion as One Fund, which Glenn can talk more about because the players led that.
Yeah.
We wanted to find a way of displaying our thanks, getting the fans involved, and then making sure that we could boost the Albion as One Fund. So the shirt seemed the obvious thing to do. We've got great colours on our shirt to complement the NHS's own colours, which looks great. And we're really pleased with the way it's been received this morning. You know, got some great emails in from our own staff and fans and people that work in the NHS already.
How will they be distributed?
Well, we wanted to make, first of all, the team at the Royal Sussex Hospital A&E department that have been dealing with so many of the emergency COVID patients, led by Dr. Rob Galloway, who's our stadium doctor. Rob's been an incredible support to the club over the last God knows how many years, and we wanted to make sure that he and his staff got the shirt, and so they'll be the first people to receive it. And then a shirt will also be going to all the other NHS trusts right the way across Sussex. Again, just to thank the staff there for what they've done. And obviously, if they want to keep the shirt, great. If they want to auction it, that's also great. And you know, again, we can put as much money as we can into the fund. All of the proceeds from the shirt will go to NHS charities, so Staff Benevolent Fund and so on. As I say, we've had a great reaction to it this morning, so we're delighted.
And with Glenn's help, of course, the Albion as One Fund seems to have gathered a lot of momentum very quickly.
Yeah, I think we're almost up to £300,000 already. We haven't really yet, you know, got all the initiatives that we want going. Obviously, the shirt is a big part of that. We're opening it up now to our other sponsors, our staff, and our fans to contribute. But the players led this and contributed a significant amount to get it going. Our chairman and directors also contributed, and we've got a range of really very important local good causes and charities that will benefit from that fund. And you know, we want to get that money to them as soon as we can. We know that they're hurting a lot at the moment, like so many organisations up and down the country. The charity sector has been really hard hit in recent weeks, and we want to try and make sure that we support them as much as we can.
And Glenn, if I can come to you, I suppose with these kind of things, you want them to leave a lasting legacy.
Yeah, it would be nice to continue the fund once this pandemic has blown over and we back to normal as a nation. But yeah, I mean, as in setting up the Albion as One Fund, it was really easy. I mean, it sounds a bit false, but it really was a message in a WhatsApp group and lots of positive thumbs up back, and that was it. The ball was rolling and everyone was on board, and then it just took sort of speaking to the club and the wages department and things and working out the logistics of it, and yeah, all really easy and very positive. And I think it just shows what a good group of players we've got here at Brighton.
You must be really proud of what has come of it so far.
Yeah, I am. Like I say, what blew me away was how easy it was to do. I came across no sort of negative comments or anything like that. So, like I say, everyone's on board. Obviously, it's a little bit different for the foreign boys, supporting a different nation and a different community. Even though they represent that community, I suppose it can be torn a little bit. Do I send my money sort of back home where I'm from, my original community, or do I keep it here with the community I sort of play for week in, week out? And yeah, it was good of them all that they've chosen to donate to that, and obviously we've got quite a good sum of money, and with the chairman's backing and the directors' input, it's really good. Obviously, we've got to open it up to fans as well, and I just feel as though that sort of makes it Albion as one. It's literally from the top of the club to the bottom of the club, and everyone's involved.
Paul, if I can come back to you, are there more things in the pipeline?
Yeah, we've got a couple of ideas actually that stem from the start of the crisis actually, and around the Arsenal game. We'll talk about that early next week. But you know, we did a lot of preparation for the Arsenal game, and we were, you know, obviously disappointed it didn't go ahead. We were concerned for Mikel Arteta, and we're obviously delighted that he's fit and well again. But we'd already sort of committed a lot of food and drink, which we were able to get out into the NHS front line because it would have been wasted otherwise.
Yeah.
But we also did a lot of preparation for the match itself. So we're going to announce something early next week around that, which again will be designed to add more funds to this particular charity that we've set up. So again, I think it's, the NHS are doing an incredible job at the moment, and the care workers and all of the key workers, the delivery drivers, the postmen and women. There are so many people out there that are working through this crisis and keeping us all healthy as they're delivering supplies of just about everything, as well as actually keeping the economy going as far as they can as well. So I think, our thank you is to the NHS primarily for what they're doing, because they're putting their lives on the line, but also to all the other key workers that are doing such a great job for us.
What about the test centre? That was obviously a big thing to set up. How is that working out?
Well, we're less than 2 weeks into the start of the operation there. We've just passed 5,000 tests at the Amex, which is incredible. We did a record 1,300 tests yesterday alone, and it just shows the demand. Yeah. It shows how well the team there have done to get the logistics working as smoothly as they have. As I said last week, I went through it myself 2 Saturdays ago. It's an incredible logistical exercise to sort of follow the drive-through process and make sure that the whole process is as secure and as safe as possible. And all of the people at the site are volunteers. We've got all of the staff that would normally be working for us in our catering areas on a match day, volunteering through their employer Sodexo to man the drive-in centre. Mm-hmm. And that's incredible. These are people that have either been previously furloughed or would have been furloughed, or who simply volunteered to come and do their bit for the community at a critical time. So, we're really impressed with the way that has worked. Very, very impressed with the organisation from Deloitte, who are the government's partner. And, we're delighted that so many NHS and frontline workers are now, and their families are now being able to get tested and either find out fairly quickly that they're negative, in which case they obviously return to work in the front line, or if they're positive, it means they can be taken out of the workforce and reduce the risk of the virus spreading. So either way, the testing process is critical, and we're very proud to be playing a very small part in that.
While all this is going on, there's obviously a football club to run. How's day-to-day life going for you at the moment?
I'm glad you reminded me about that. Yeah, it's an interesting time. I mean, running the football club from your living room or your kitchen is not ideal, to be honest. And especially when you've got sort of family members that are also working from home, and a dog that doesn't really know what's happening either. It's a difficult time. I mean, obviously, our primary concern is for people's health, and we're just all hoping that we get through this period as quickly as we can. But we're also hoping that we can, keep the club in as good a shape as possible. Not playing football for a football club is a disaster. And our income has literally hit the roadblocks. Match days have obviously ceased, but also non-match days have ceased as well. All the events and exhibitions, and at this time of year, we'd be doing exams for the universities, we'd be doing graduation ceremonies in a few months' time, and all of that has just stopped. And with it, of course, it puts jobs in jeopardy. It puts people's livelihoods in jeopardy, not just at the Premier League level, but all the way through the football pyramid. And the one thing about our football club is we're very, very conscious of where we came from. And, we haven't always been a Premier League club. In fact, only very recently, as you know, have we been a Premier League club. So our thoughts are with the clubs in the Championship, League One and League Two, where we've experienced playing football. And it's hard for us, so it must be very, very hard for them. And, our thoughts go out to them at this time, because the football industry is a close-knit community. And, we've got a lot of friends, all of us, all the way down through the pyramid. And this is a worrying time for everybody.
Glenn, coming back to you, what would your message be to the people of Brighton?
Just that we're here and we're trying to help in any way we can, both the players and the club together. And listen, those funds that have been well documented yesterday, they'll be hopefully out in the local community as soon as possible.
Yeah. How are things for you, day-to-day life? I suppose for anyone at the moment, a sense of routine is important.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the one thing that sort of we miss. But luckily enough, I've got a daughter and a son, and they've got their homeschooling, so that gives us a little bit of structure to the day. I do a little bit of exercise, and all of a sudden it's bedtime and the day starts again. It's a bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it?
How are things going with the fitness side of things? Are you varying your routine in that sense?
So to be honest, I've tried to have as much of a break as possible. Just sort of forward thinking that if we do get this season back up and running, we're going to have a really short break in between the next season coming, and to sort of be on my feet at this age for a possible sort of, or should I say, keeping a very good level of fitness for upwards of 2 years. Obviously, taking the season that's just gone into consideration, that'll be difficult. So I'm trying to take this time to rest my joints as much as possible. Obviously, we have got to try and keep a base level of fitness in case we do get called back. But yeah, so I've been doing more biking than running and things, and yeah, trying to forward think.
Have you been able to use the training ground at all on your own?
I've been invited, but I haven't been along yet.
Just going back to the home life, the school teaching, I read Latin is one of the things you're teaching. Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Yeah. I'm learning things as well. Latin wasn't on my school thing when I was a young guy. I was more of a German man, but yeah, I've been learning things along with my 7-year-old. It's been fun. It's been good to spend some good time with her.
And I suppose regular contact with the manager as well.
Yeah, regular contact with everyone. That's been really good. Well, before this pandemic, I'd never heard of Zoom, but now every day I'm on it. And yeah, so obviously there's the keeping fit aspect of it, but also the sort of mental side of it, and keeping sort of fresh that way. So we have daily Zoom meetings as a squad, where we can all log on, and as well as doing exercise, we have a chat, and it's good to see everyone. Obviously, being a footballer, you walk into a dressing room and it's your second family. Really, you spend probably at some points in the season more time with them than you do with your own family, traveling up and down the country and things. So you do miss them. I didn't think I would, but I do miss them, and walking into that changing room and listen, you might be having a little bit of a bad day, and when you walk in, it's sort of like it's uplifting. There's always somebody in a good mood to pick you up. And yeah, you do miss that a little bit.
What about hobbies and things? I know you tweeted about music. Tim Burgess doing his thing every day. I suppose music helps a lot of people at the moment, and I know you're into it.
Yeah, do you know what? It's this sort of. I feel as though social media has become a source of good, and not such a negative space that I once found it to be. And yeah, it's opened up a lot of different things. I see a lot of sort of Insta interviews, live Insta interviews and things, and obviously Tim Burgess has got his music listening parties that you sort of log in on Twitter to and listen along, and all have a tweet and read sort of the band's tweets. So yeah, it's good. It shows that the communities and I suppose the world are coming together as one.
You must feel like a big part of what the club is doing at the moment as well, because obviously it was you that was behind the Albion as one fund with Lewis Dunk. You must feel a huge part of what's going on at the moment with the club. Yeah,
well, I'm just sitting at home doing nothing else really. So, so yeah, we just put our heads together, and that's what we came out with. But yeah, it's good. It's good to sort of work on a level for a few weeks with Paul Barber and Dan Ashworth, and see the club from a completely different point of view. Obviously, we see it sort of day in, day out training and sort of renegotiating contracts when they come up and things like that, and new signings walking the door. But I mean, the other side of it, it's just huge. Like Paul mentioned there, all the events that we had up at the Amex that have been cancelled. It's just sort of, we go to the Amex when we need to. If it's a player appearance or a game of football, that's the only time we'll go. But I don't think the players realise how big the club is in the community sometimes.
Yeah. Paul, just to come back to you, I suppose that's what people are seeing now, how important the football club is in the community.
Yeah, it's really important. And I think it's the same for the other 90 clubs up and down the country. You know, almost all of them are right at the heart of their community, do great work all the way through the year. And I think without exception, you know, players and clubs have done an amazing job during the last sort of 6-7 weeks that we've been in this situation. It's interesting hearing Glenn talking about Latin. I know now why the wage discussions have taken so long. He's speaking Latin, and I'm trying to speak. I'm just a London lad. I don't understand this Latin business. Now I know why we're struggling here. But no, I mean, seriously, it's a really important time for football clubs to play their part. And I think you know, from everything I've read and seen, they are, and footballers are as well. As Glenn said earlier, there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of good people that work in football, and the players are very much part of that. So, you know, we're only one industry, we can only do so much, but I think what we are doing, hopefully, is making a difference to people.
Great to see. Thanks, guys, both of you. All the best.
Cheers, Adam.
Cheers, Glenn. Cheers, Paul.
I was going to say gratias tibi there, which I don't know if Glenn knows what that means. Over to you, Roger.
Hi guys, can you hear me there? Hello?
Hi, Roger.
Hello. Hi, Paul, hope you're well. You covered a lot of ground there with Adam, but I just wanted to ask you about the reopening of the training ground. I know a few clubs have done. What was the decision-making process there on deciding it was safe to go back in, and the precautions that you'd need to take just to make it available for the players?
Yeah, well, we've been sort of looking at ways of making training a little bit more interesting for the players. I mean, there's only so much work you can do in your living room, your garage, or if you're lucky enough to have a home gym. And outdoor space is important. We all know that. I think we've all, appreciated getting out and about at least once a day in the last 6 weeks. And for the players, we wanted to give them an area where it was private and safe to run. And although we're very lucky in this part of the world to have some great seafront areas and some nice parks, unfortunately, you know, everybody's using them at the moment, and it's difficult enough for anyone to be out running or cycling or whatever. So we wanted to try and sort of create a safe environment for the players that was also private, where social distancing could be maintained. And we thought, well, hang on, we've got our own private park effectively. You know, we've got this beautiful training ground, and providing that we can make it as safe and as secure as possible for the players. So we have a schedule. The players book into it. They're there in isolation, effectively. They're not coming into contact with other people. We don't open the dressing rooms or the changing rooms or the showers or any of the restaurant facilities. So the players drive in their kit, leave in their kit. So, you know, in terms of their work, you know, there's only so much as a professional athlete that you can do at home. You know, this is a reasonable journey for them to make. In most cases, it's a 15, 20-minute journey at the most for the players. They then do their running, they come back, and that's it. So, you know, in terms of maintaining and conforming with the government guidelines, we first satisfied ourselves that we were doing that. And then secondly, we wanted to make sure that the players understood that this was a part of their work, which they can't do at home. So that's how it came about. And, you know, as Glenn said, you know, it's voluntary at the moment. So, you know, it's not mandatory. And over the course of the next couple of weeks or so, you know, we'll probably see more and more of the players wanting to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you there, because Glenn was saying he hasn't been in yet. Have the players been taking the opportunity to go into training? And is there almost a sense that they're itching to get back, just to get back into that something resembling a familiar routine?
Well, I think we all are, Roger. I think that's part of the challenge we've all got at the moment. You know, you don't realise how much you miss something until it's not there anymore. You know, Glenn didn't realise how much he appreciated going into the dressing room and just being lifted by teammates. I think it's the same for all of us. You know, no matter how good or bad a day you're having, there's always someone in the office, or in Glenn's case, the changing room, that's going to come up with a wisecrack that lifts your spirits, you know, no matter how low you might be feeling. And I think we're all missing that at the moment. So there is a general desire, I think, to get back to a degree of normality. But obviously we're also very, very aware that we're still in a lockdown. The government haven't lifted any social distancing measures. And so we've got to make sure we comply. And I think that's the one challenge for football clubs and all high profile people in this period, is that there's an expectation that we're going to make sure we all do the right thing because of the profile that comes with being a Premier League football club, and in Glenn's case, a Premier League footballer. So, you know, that's an added dimension, an added sort of challenge and responsibility that we have at the moment. So we have to make sure we do things properly. That's the early stages, perhaps, of getting back into training and training grounds and looking ahead to when they get back to playing again. There is this Premier League meeting tomorrow. Had these throughout lockdown and so on. What are you expecting
from tomorrow's meeting? Is it just an update? You're expecting some firm talks about perhaps even firm dates about when you might be getting back?
No, I think it's going to be an update. It's an opportunity for all of the 20 clubs to share their views of how the last sort of couple of weeks have gone since the last meeting. We're also very aware that the government don't meet for another week or so to discuss lockdown measures and social distancing measures. So in that regard, it will be another opportunity for us to hear from the Premier League what their talks with government have been like, what their expectations of us as of clubs is. We'll take it from there. But at the moment, it's, we're all in a holding pattern, aren't we? We're waiting really on the government to tell us what we can do and when it's safe to do.
There have been these proposals that have been put forward, Project Restart. I don't know if you had a chance to have a look at them, things about parking spaces and players coming back wearing face masks and so on. Have you had a chance to have a glance over those proposals ahead of the meeting?
We're still going through them. We're still sort of getting the input from our medical staff and our technical staff, Dan Ashworth and obviously Graham. But the one key thing that we've said all along is that we have a real desire to want to finish the season, because from a competition integrity point of view, that's important. But we can only do that when it's safe. And when we talk about it being safe, we don't just mean safe for us. We mean safe for the players as well. It's very, very important that the players take to the pitch feeling confident that the government are backing whatever plans that we've got and have authorised those plans. And obviously that's something which at the moment we would obviously have to wait for before we can move forward. But we're doing everything possible to stay fit, be prepared, be ready for when that time comes, if indeed it does in the near term. We just have to wait now for the government.
Just in terms of those proposals, as we've seen them reported anyway, just in terms of the face masks, the tests before returning to training, the amount of tests that would be needed and amount of disinfecting things and so on, is the capacity there to do all this sort of stuff that might be needed just to get back playing again?
I mean, that's not a question for me, Roger. That's a question for those people that are looking at that, which is the league. I mean, as clubs, we're one of 20. We rely very much on our colleagues at the Premier League and at the FA, and in the case of the EFL clubs as well, the EFL, to work through all these things. And the logistics are very, very important. And it's the one thing that we're at this stage shielded from. We've got enough on our plates to keep our businesses running, our clubs running. We rely on our colleagues at the league to get all of those details right.
If I can ask you, it was a sad day for Brighton fans, particularly Brighton fans with memories stretching back to the 80s, and Michael Robinson passing away this week. Any thoughts from the club about how they might mark that perhaps when they get back to playing? I mean, he was a player that was a very popular player during a high point of Brighton's history.
He was a fabulous striker. I remember him very well. As a kid watching Michael play, not just for Brighton, but for Liverpool as well, and Republic of Ireland. Our chairman paid a special tribute to him this week, and certainly when we get back to playing, we'll want to do something in front of the fans as well when the fans are allowed back in the stadium. But obviously at this time, our condolences go out to Michael's family.
Okay, thanks, Paul. If I can turn to Glenn now. Glenn, good to see you. You mentioned before that you haven't been back into the training ground yet yourself. Is it something you're planning to do soon now that it's been reopened?
Yes, I'm planning on going back in tomorrow. And like Paul said, I think from a player's point of view, the parks and the seafront are quite busy down here with people using their daily 1 hour for exercise and things like that. And Brighton's a funny place really, because it's densely populated, and it's squashed in by one side the sea and the other side the motorway. So there's not much space down here. So to open the training ground, it's sensible. It seems like common sense.
Are you all comfortable going back in? You know that the club will have taken all the precautions necessary, and as players you'll have been itching to get back, see each other, but you know that it'll be training in a very different way from what you're used to.
Well, yeah, I mean, we say the training ground's open, but like Paul touched on that, it's not open. The grass is there for us to go on. I mean, the canteen's not open, the changing rooms aren't open. We literally drive up in our kit, get out, run around on the grass, get back in our car and go home for a shower. So as far as it being open, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. And yeah, it'll be great to see a few familiar faces, some teammates, but it'll be at a healthy distance out in the fresh air, and I don't think there's going to be any balls involved. It's literally going to be running and trying to keep that base level of fitness for when we called on to restart the season.
You talked before about the Albion as one. You talked about your involvement as well in talking to the club and how it works its way through this lockdown. Have you found that that's been a good way of occupying your mind? Other players won't have had those things on their mind they think about trying to organise and so on. Has that been a good thing for you working through this lockdown?
Yeah, it has taken up quite a bit of time, to be honest. I think me and Paul Barber speak more now than we ever have in my last 3.5 years at the club. But yeah, it's been something to, I suppose, occupy me. But it's just nice sort of knowing that the squad are doing good and doing right by the people of the city and the county.
Just in terms of those negotiations with the club and talking through, how did that land on you? Did you put your hand up for it? Did you get nominated by the players as a spokesman, or how did that work out?
Yeah, I think it's an age thing, to be honest. I think the boys look at me to be a bit more sensible than most of them, and obviously Lewis the captain, so it's fallen on our shoulders.
Is that something that now you look at, that perhaps going forward, as being a spokesman for players going forward, but beyond this lockdown and so on, is that something you enjoy and perhaps could look at as a future career, perhaps?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, but I mean, the proof's in the pudding. It depends if I'm any good at it. Who knows? I'm not the one to judge that, I don't think.
Just in terms of that, the getting communication with the players and going back to the training ground and so on, how has the communication been between the players? Have you been supporting each other? Is it there's the banter continue between the players and so on WhatsApp groups? And how have you stayed in touch and stayed as a team?
So obviously we've got a WhatsApp group that's constantly pinging off. I think I've turned mine to silent now and just catch up when I look at my phone, unless I'll be constantly on it. And then I mentioned earlier the Zoom meetings we have. We have daily Zoom meetings to exercise together and just to catch up on a friend's level as well, have a bit of banter and things. So yeah, I know that a few have been doing quizzes. I've been doing a few quizzes with a group of players, but obviously a lot of players sort of warm to one another differently. So there'll be pockets of the group that are having quizzes and things or doing things that I'm probably not invited to. Not to say that there's a divide or anything, but obviously you're closer to others than you are to some in a dressing room, and some people sort of aren't local anymore and are away at home and things. So yeah. And
on those quizzes, who's the club genius? Who wins? Who's the one with more general knowledge?
I really don't want to tell you this. Actually, I'll be fair. It's David Button, which I can accept fully because Butty's a clever guy. But Dan Burn seems to be doing quite well, which is infuriating me. And I think it's just down to the number of quizzes he's doing every night with him and his wife.
Excellent. Well, we were talking to Paul before about there is a Premier League meeting tomorrow. There are proposals that have been put forward about how they might start the return and so on. And they included things like players wearing face masks, lots of disinfecting, things like cones and balls and GPS equipment and so on. Just in terms of, you just want to get back and play football. Is all that worth going through to get back, or would you rather see it? Let's get back to where we can play football and train properly as we would normally train.
Well, I think we've got to look at the Premier League as the global brand it is, and the reason it's that big is because of the quality of play and the quality of players that are in it, and to be hindering ourselves with certain things, like you say, like face masks and things, it's going to be off-putting. It's not going to be natural. People are going to be ripping them off in the middle of the games and things like that, or in the middle of training. So I think it's quite farcical. I understand why people are desperate to get football on. I mean, I am one of those people. I'm desperate, but I think it's got to be done in a sensible way and in the right time and in a way that's going to keep not only the players safe and the staff safe, but I mean, there's so much goes into a football game. It's incredible. There's going to be ambulances at training and at games. And is it fair to take that from the NHS? I mean, who knows? That's a question for other people, I suppose. There's cameramen, so it's not as if it's sort of just two squads, two teams facing each other. There's a lot more input to it, and it puts a lot more people at risk.
And just as players, because obviously you have your role at the club where you're talking to the club and you're talking to other players. Within the Premier League, we know earlier on when Jordan Henderson and so on led the discussions, are they talks still going? Do you still talk to people from other clubs and say, well, what do you think about this? I'm reading this in the newspaper and these proposals and so on. Do the players have their own opinion, and how much are you being consulted about them?
So we've still got the captains group going about the Place Together fund. We're still working on things to better that and benefit it. But as far as sort of newspaper reports and things about what may happen, there's not really been too much concern on that because it's out of our control, and at the end of the day it's guesswork. Until something is said, listen, this is what's happening, then we can have an opinion, but until then I think it's a waste of energy.
Would you be prepared to speak up if and as and when proposals come through, and if something is put to the players, would you be happy to perhaps representing Brighton as you do with the players within the club and speak to other players from around the country?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I understand that the public is desperate to get football on because we all want something to watch, but it's us that are going to be going out there and sort of competing against other teams, and we're not just talking about guys that are sort of local in one community. We're talking about guys from all over the world that could possibly be carrying the disease. Who knows? And I know it'll be tested, but I know it doesn't always show up. So there's so many caveats to it. But yeah, if it came to it and I was asked, I would give the honest opinion of my group of players.
Just picking up from what Roger said there, is there a general consensus among the Brighton players, the desperation to get back, not just to play football again, but to get back amongst the lads at the training ground as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the case as our group is, but I think that's the case for most groups in the UK, whether they be working in factories or building sites. I mean, people just are craving some structure and some normality back to their lives, and we're exactly the same.
But has that willingness for the players to get back to training perhaps been taken for granted in some of the conversations we see? People want football back, but it's ultimately you going to be putting your health on the line as well if and when football does return. Yeah,
I mean, everyone's in different situations, really. I mean, I've got children at home. I wouldn't want to jeopardise them. Some footballers will have newly born children, sort of little babies that are weaker and even more inclined to possibly get the disease if the footballer's carrying it. Then some footballers are living with elderly parents with health issues. I mean, there's all sorts of different situations that goes into a team and into a football club. So it's a really difficult situation to agree on, to be honest.
In terms of the wage discussions, I know you've been part of those. I guess people on the outside will wonder why these have taken so long to come to agreements, but can you give as much insight as you can maybe into those discussions?
So yeah, our discussions with the club are ongoing. It's all been positive. And really it all boils down to how long this continues. And the longer it continues, the more we know we need to do. But again, just going back to players' situations and scenarios, everyone's different. Some players will be very lucky in that they don't have a mortgage and they've got money to spare. Other professionals will be sort of sending it overseas to their communities or to their parents or brothers and sisters and things. So it's not as simple as saying this footballer gets this much money and he should take this cut because he might not have that money to give.
There's been talk about the fact that matches may need to take place at neutral and approved stadiums. Do you think that would potentially affect the integrity of the competition if, for instance, Brighton couldn't play at the Amex or Liverpool couldn't play at Anfield, for instance?
I don't think it would. I don't think it would thing the integrity of it, but because it would be a level playing field, that there would be no advantage to a home or away game for either team. So I suppose if you look back at sort of the teams that you might have played at home and then you're going to play them at a neutral venue, you might have the upper hand on the 2 games that go by because you've had one at home and one at neutral venue. They won't have had one at home. So, yeah, there's all sorts of ways to look at it, but I'm hoping that it doesn't come to that scenario. I think that's far-fetched. To spend 8 weeks away from your family is, I think it's quite a big ask, to be honest.
Do you think that would be too much, the talk of sort of players staying quarantined in a hotel for 6 weeks, being isolated, not being able to see their families? Does that seem a stretch too far to try and get football played and get this season finished?
It's not just the 8 weeks away from your family. It's the knock-on effect of everything else. I mean, we're all going to be in hotels. They're going to have to be staffed. There's going to be housekeepers. There's going to be chefs coming and going. It can't be completely sort of locked down and just you guys there, unless we're doing our own washing and cooking. And I know some of the guys aren't very good at that.
And just finally, I saw that Dave Kitson's put himself forward for a role with the PFA, and he was quite strong today, saying that he's found the PFA scandalous and he's embarrassed to be a member of the PFA. I just want to get your opinion on that and how you found the PFA over the last few weeks and over your career as well, I guess. Yeah,
to be honest, in the current predicament, the PFA have been really good with us. Obviously, it's our union. We've got to stick together with them. And yeah, we're working in cohesion with them in this difficult time.
Thank you, Glenn.
Cheers.
And just a quick one for you, Paul. I wonder if you can give some insight into what an approved stadium would be, and if you think Brighton, the Amex, tick boxes for an approved stadium.
Well, first of all, we would expect to play our remaining 5 home games at the Amex. That's an absolute priority for us. There are, as Glenn says, going to be games where if it wasn't a neutral stadium and it was an away game, then that advantage, or disadvantage, the perceived disadvantage we might have, then gets neutralised. But we want to be playing on our pitch. We're familiar with it. We want to be in our dressing room. We want to be in our stadium, even if there aren't fans there. So, for us, that's an important priority. I think in terms of when you start a Premier League season or an EFL season, you expect to play an equal number of games, home and away. You expect to play them, on the same basis as far as possible. But as I've said a couple of times during this crisis, this, whatever ends up being the end to the season, is going to be imperfect. And for us, the imperfection will probably be almost certainly playing behind closed doors. What we wouldn't want is to have a further imperfection of having to play at a neutral venue. The Amex is a world-class stadium with great facilities, and whatever we're required to do to meet the health and safety guidelines, then we would expect to be able to make them. But as Glenn said, the absolute priority is keeping the players safe and the staff safe. I must admit, if we were in a situation where it was felt necessary to lock players up for 2 months, that would suggest to me the country's not safe. So for me, that doesn't make sense. It's illogical. But, we need to see where we get to and see where the Premier League have got to tomorrow at the meeting. And then again at our meeting in a couple of weeks' time. And in between that, we would expect to hear back from the government on where the lockdown is and what the social distancing measures will be going forward. But, we need to wait and see.
If I just start with you, sorry, I just missed a couple of minutes there, just previously.
They were probably the best bits, Johnny.
I know. James always asks the good ones. I'm just going to say the protocol and stuff that Glenn mentioned about, what have you made of some of the things that have been mooted in terms of it, and how much of a logistical issue will that be for clubs?
Well, anything that isn't normal is going to be a challenge. So, the one thing that we do very, very well in the Premier League and in professional football generally is deliver match days. You've been part of hundreds of them. You know what they're like. They're very professionally delivered. So any variation of that is going to be a challenge. And any variation that means we've got to take absolutely extra care of players and staff to keep them safe is an even bigger challenge. So, working through the guidelines, I'm still doing that. I'll spend the rest of the day doing that to make sure I understand them fully before tomorrow's meeting. Our medical staff have been part of the talks, so we've had a step-by-step insight as to the direction. But I'd say at this stage, they're very much guidelines that have got to be approved by government. Government's got to lift a lockdown, got to ease social distancing measures. I think Glenn said earlier in the week, it's going to be very hard to mark players at a corner if there's social distancing measures in place. We've got to be cognizant of what the public are being asked to do and how that might look if footballers are asked to do something different. So I think we've got to be very, very cognizant of all those things. But as I say, we'll go through the measures. I'm sure we'll have a discussion about it tomorrow at the meeting, and then we'll see where we get to with the government next week and take it from there.
You mentioned Rob Galloway. Is he somebody you've been seeking advice from in these kind of issues as well? And is it him and you're pooling stuff from your medical staff as well?
The Premier League have got a group that all the doctors, all of the club doctors and the head of medical services, they all meet regularly to discuss those aspects. Rob Galloway is our stadium doctor, so Rob is the consultant at the A&E department for the Royal Sussex Hospital. Right from the start of the virus, Rob has been fantastic in giving us an insight into what we should be looking for, what the impacts of this virus could be. And I've got to say, right from the very start, 6 or 7 weeks ago, when this thing first broke out, everything that Rob has said and predicted has come to pass. And I'm sure, he would be the first to say he wished he'd been wrong. He talked about how serious this virus could be, how many people it could affect, that it would actually take lives of not just older people, but younger people, and not just people with underlying health conditions, but people who didn't have underlying health conditions. So all of the things Rob warned us about have, as I say, sadly come to pass. And, we're now in a situation where 26,000 people have lost their lives. That has to be top of our mind. Glenn and I both find it sort of uncomfortable to be talking a little, about football at this time. There are so many families up and down the country that are suffering terrible bereavements. And if they're not suffering terrible bereavements, they're either ill or they're losing their jobs or they're suffering in different ways. So, we find this, conversation about football at the moment a little bit uncomfortable, but we're also aware that if we could get back to playing, then we know that it would give a lot of people a lift as well. But we can only do that, and we will only do that if it's safe for everybody. And I think that's really important.
We don't know yet what the government's decision is going to be, but one thing that they did talk about was the possibility of quarantine of people coming back into the country. When will you make a decision on the players that are still abroad about them coming back to the UK?
Yeah, that's already been scheduled. I mean, the one very important thing about the Premier League medical communications is that we've always had a rough timetable of when the players might be expected to be back, to be available to train. As Glenn said, the training ground's not open, the field's open, but nothing else. So we've always factored that in. It means that the players that are overseas will start to mend their way back, wend their way back now, effectively, over the next few days. And then, we'll be ready, as we promised we would be, to train during May. And then we'll see where we get to with the possible return to play. But, we've always said we feel we need about 4 weeks for the players to be able to be training properly before they can play a match in a competitive way. The one thing we don't want is to sort of rush players back, not only with an environment that's not safe, but then risk serious injury to those players as well. So, we've got to get all these things very, very well balanced. And, we've said before, we can only return to play when it's safe to do so. And I think everyone has got a willingness to do that, but we've got to make sure that we keep the players' health at the top of our minds as well.
Thank you, Paul. Glenn, I know we spoke about the Albion as one campaign earlier in the week, but in terms of a return back to playing, in terms of your thought process, have you spent a lot of time considering how you might go about the implications, some of these protocols, the social distancing, the ethical side of it? Has it been quite a lot to take in for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of media reports of how it will be finished, if it will be finished, and it's quite draining actually. So I've tried my best to knock off from it until a decision's made, and then we can sort of make a decision off the back of that. At the minute, there's so many variations flying around. I mean, I think I heard today that we were going to finish this season, break over Christmas, play until November, the next season, and then lead into the World Cup sort of thing the following season. So there's just so many different variants flying by. It's incredible.
There has been a reported increase in some players calling helplines and the psychological impact of this all. From your point of view, is that quite understandable as this continued lockdown goes on? I mean, it's great that they're seeking help as well, isn't it? That there are sort of these support networks for people if they are struggling.
Yeah, it's amazing that there's the support networks, but I don't think you can only sort of ring fence football players in that. I think it's the whole nation. I think it's difficult staying at home. Obviously, people's scenarios are different. Some people may be in sort of a one-bedroom flat on the 12th floor on their own for 6 weeks. I mean, that must be incredibly tough. I feel lucky that I've got a wife and children to bounce off every day. To keep some structure in my life, because I think it would be difficult, and obviously there's a lot of foreign football players away from their homes, stuck in this country. Yeah, I mean, it's a strange enough time for us all, I think, this pandemic, but to be in a foreign land as well as riding through it must be extremely difficult for them.
And in terms of those protocols, it's good that you got your excuse in earlier about marking at corners. But in reality, for you, is that an ethical thing? The whole social distancing message, but also coming into contact with other players. Is that quite a major thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's
for you?
like I say, it's players from not only this country but from all over the world that have been home recently. Yeah, it's. If you watch any corner at a game, they say over and over again that could be a penalty, that could be a penalty, because you're so touch tight, you're pulling, you're grappling, you're desperate for your man not to score, and that won't change because the instinct of a football player will remain the same, that you're desperate for your opponent not to score. So how we can sort of mark men and try and get away from people without sort of becoming extremely close is it's impossible.